Hello again, viewers. This is my 1997 Cannondale T900, and today I'm going to be working on the back V-brakes. I'm going to put an inline cable adjuster on the rear brake, and I'm going to replace the pads. Here's my inline adjuster. It's made by Jaguar, and it just rotates when you have it in there. I'm going to install it right here, and normally you'd put it up by the handlebars, but I think I want it back here just so I only have to cut a little piece of the cable out to get this put in there. So the first thing I need to do is take the brakes, and then you just squeeze them in this little U-shape lifts out. There's just a little hook there, and so that releases the brakes so that you can take it apart. And what I need to do is cut some of this cable, but I've got to undo the brakes. So you just take your 5mm and break it loose. Alright, so nice thing about brake cables is they're pretty thick, so they can take some abuse. I'm going to have to cut the cable, and this is my cable cutter. You can see it has kind of a rounded, so what it does is when it cuts, it's not like a flat cutter that cuts it and that'll make it fray. This won't cut it and keep it tight. So I just need to cut that end off. So I'll put it in there. Alright, and if you see, the cable is still nice and tight. It didn't fray out, and that's what you want to do, because I've got to pull this off. I've got to slide this elbow off, and all these pieces that come through. There's the plastic that's inside the elbow. So I'll put all this stuff aside, and then I've got to push the cable back through, which means I have to go to the front there to get it to push through, so I can cut a piece off here and a piece off here to fit the connector in. Okay, so I've pushed the brake cable back up through to about here. It's just hanging out in the front of the bike. And I'm going to take my cutters here, and I'm going to cut off a little over 1 inch of the cable. Let's see, this is going to be alright. And you can see it cuts it pretty good. You just want to make sure that the cable will go through there smoothly. So this is the part I'm going to keep, and then I need to cut another piece off about the length of this. Now the cable actually goes inside here like that. So what I'm going to do is just get it about the same length and just cut that piece off. Make sure that everything's fine. I've got my little pointed tool. You guys, if you've watched a few of my videos, you see me use this thing all the time. But I'm just making sure that it's smooth. Yeah. And then it's good. And then the other piece that I'm going to use, just do the same thing there. Make sure that's all good. And this is the end that was at the very end, so that should be okay too. But see, there's a rough edge there. Let me get my file out and file that down. I've got a really rough edge there. It didn't cut so good, so hopefully I'll file that down a little bit. Get it nice and smooth, and then I'll come back. It's going to go in here like this, but what I want to do is make sure that it's nice and smooth before I jam it in there. Alright, now so what I've done is I've finished filing this cable housing down so it's nice and smooth, and then I've pushed the cable back through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this lithium grease. You could use wheel bearing grease or whatever you want, but I'm just going to spray a little bit on this paper towel and apply some of this lithium grease to the cable. I'm just going to slide a cable through this housing. It's a little tricky because this cable's been clamped once, but it goes, and then you got to make sure it seats tightly into the housing. Okay, and then I've got my new little piece that's going to go in there. I'll just slide the cable through. a little tricky at first, but it goes. And then put that bit in there. Alright, let's try to make it nice and tight. Alright, now, yeah, that's what I want. So it'll turn, and you see, I don't know, hopefully you can see, there's the lines. So you turn it out, and it gives you 5 millimeters, I think is what it gives you, of cable movement. See how the two lines are showing, and then I'll turn it this way. And it goes back in to the minimum. So we'll start with the minimum. Okay, so the next step is to slide the elbow back in, and I'm just going to feed the cable through. This is a bit tricky because the cable is greasy, but that's alright. There it goes, and then it just hooks on there, and then just slide it onto that part of the brake. And since I'm going to put new pads on, I'm not going to go ahead and clamp it on this side just yet. Okay, so I'm going to take the first pad off, and again, this is your 5 mil. And they come off pretty easy. There's a lot of adjustments on these, so don't worry about taking them apart. There's a lot of pieces. You see here, there's all these different pieces in there. I keep these in order just so I can compare it with the new one. Okay, so there's a washer, a beveled washer. Let me see if I can get this. It's got like a dish here, the second piece, and then this beveled one that sits in it. So that's what allows you to kind of make the adjustments you need to make so it fits the wheel just right. You just slide it in the slot. Of course, it's got to miss the frame there too. So first thing you got to do is just get it on the, so I'm going to get all the pieces on, all the washers in place. I don't know how well you can see all this, but you just got to get it started first. Okay, once you get it to strike the rim the way you want it, just kind of hold it there and then just give it a little tighten there so it'll stay. And just make sure, the thing you want to make sure is it's hitting kind of in the middle of the braking surface here so that it has a good bite at it. And then you want to make sure that it's not hitting make sure it's hitting flat and that the whole surface of the pad is hitting. When you tighten them up, you got to be careful because when you tighten it, it can turn it, the whole thing, and you don't want that. And these don't have to be, I mean, there is a torque specification for them, but I just tighten them kind of fairly snug. That's probably about 50 inch-pounds or something like that, I guess, if I had to guess. And that'll hold them in place. Okay, that one's good. So I'll do the same for the other side, and then we'll put it back together. Okay, so I've got both brake pads on. Got the elbow reattached. I'm just going to slide it into the brake mechanism there to hold it. And then these will come together. I've got to get that just so and crimped. And that's the tricky part. You need like 3 hands. I forgot to put my rubber seal in there, so I'll have to back it off anyway. This is the thing. You got to remember all the little pieces. Alright, and this is an important piece because it shields that part of the cable from the weather. And it may not seem that important, but weather is your enemy when it comes to stuff. And you see this bike has fenders. This is my bad weather bike, so anything I can do to protect it from the elements will be a good thing for me. So you pull the cable, make sure it's tight. Alright, I think that's tight, and then you just leave enough slack. So And now I'll just check the lever. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. It pulls, the lever pulls about 1 inch. I kind of like that. I don't like it real tight. I think I'm going to be happy with that though. Just make sure that that's on there good. The other thing is just get it good. This one I go about 80 inch-pounds. I get that pretty tight because you don't want that slipping loose. When you pull on the brakes hard, if that slips loose, you got no brakes, and you definitely don't want that. So make sure that pinch bolt is tight. This is a pretty strong cable. So that's on pretty good. The other thing is I'll have to make sure I adjust it so that they strike at the same time. And there's adjustment screw right here for the spring tension. So if one side's hidden before the other, each side has a little screw here, a little Phillips screw. You tighten it in for more spring pressure to pull it away, and you turn it counterclockwise to give it less spring pressure to bring it closer to the rim when it's in its neutral position. And then I need to put on a ferrule. This is a big ferrule. It's for the brake cable. Slide it over the end of the brake cable, and then take some, these are just wire cutters, flat ones. I just do 1 crimp and 2 crimps. And just, you know, hard enough to keep it from falling off. Don't crimp it too hard, you'll cut it right off. And then since this is sticking out, what I'm going to do is just put a little bend in it. Yeah, there, I just put a little bend in it so it's, when my leg's going around, I won't bump into that. That's the only reason I do that. Okay, so that is on. Okay, so I've got my small Phillips, and what I'm going to do is just turn this one in a bit to put more spring pressure, and what that does is it pulls it away. And I'm just looking on both sides to make sure it's not rubbing. Yeah, it looks pretty good actually. I'm happy with that. You see both the arms when I squeeze it are moving about the same, and when I let go they both flop out, and that's what you want. And the last thing I'll do is I'm going to take, of course you've seen me do this before, taking some steel wool and just cleaning up the surface, because these are brand new brake pads. So I'll go all the way around, clean the crud off the brake surface so it's nice and smooth for the new brake pads. So thanks for watching, guys. As with anything, if you got any questions or comments, leave them below.